Greetings, adventurers. This is DM Kurt, and if you're a 5th edition Dungeon Master, I would suggest that you pick up DM's guides from other editions. I've pushed for the 1st edition DM's guide. It's a very excellent one and possibly the best of the D&D series. But I would also suggest that if you're looking at other editions, that you also include Castles and Crusades. So, Castles and Crusades is available on DriveThruRPG in PDF format. They often go on sale, and I recently saw the core 3 books for that game for free as PDF only. They do sales frequently. True Lord Games, I think it is. Anyhow, yeah, it is. Castles and Crusades in PDF form. Hit the printer. Castle Keeper's Guide. Now, the Castle Keeper's Guide's not really that essential. You can play the game using only the player's guide and a little bit of imagination and maybe the monster guide. But this Castle Keeper's Guide is something that would be helpful even if you're not playing Castles and Crusades. So let's say you're running a 5th edition game. So I'm going to crack open Castles and Crusades, and I'm going to look over here, Chapter 2, Magic. So they have some ideas that might be useful. You might want to consider them. One is, you stick with your standard Vancian style magic, which is what D&D is used for magic, where you have these slots, these pre-memorized spells, and as you cast spells, you burn off your slots. They provide 2 alternatives. Now, the first is a mana point based system, which is you have this many mana points, and if your spells cost so many mana points per level, then you just burn whatever combination of mana points you want to cast your spells. You could cast 3 third level spells, or you could cast 12 first level spells, depending on how the points work out. In 2 entirely different days, your loadout could be similar, but your effective casting could be quite different. And the other option, which I've seen in the Total Party Skills games, is a skill point based system where you can cast as many spells in a day that you want, except you have to roll a skill check in order to cast them. So if you want to cast your spell, you roll a difficulty that's basically going to be 12 plus double the spell level, and then minus your casting level and minus your attribute bonus for the appropriate attribute. If you succeed, the spell goes off. If you fail, you suffer 1d4 points of damage times the spell level. So they call that spell burn. And I worked out a little chart, and if you're casting the highest level spell that you're normally allowed to, let's say a 5th level caster trying to throw out a 3rd level fireball or whatever, you only need to roll about a 13. It's a little risky, but you can do it. That's 13, not adjusted for your attribute bonus. So if you get a +3 in your attributes, you're looking at a 10 or better on the die, you're good to go. And a 20 always makes, and a 1 always fails. Okay. Interesting way to do it. It also allows for counter spelling, where if someone's casting a spell, you'll roll a check to see what level of caster or spell you're going up against, and then you can attempt a skill check of your own. If it succeeds higher than, if your roll with all adjustments is higher than theirs, you succeed and you knock it out. And if you fail, you suffer spell burn and they get their thing off anyway. So it does allow for counter spelling. This is something you could use if you want to do a little homebrew in your campaign. Expanding equipment. Okay, so between the player's book and the Castle Keeper's Guide, Um, there is a ton of equipment. I'm looking at wagons and carts. There is almost 24 wagons and carts of totally different types. You could get a buckboard wagon. You could get a hand cart, aka wheelbarrow. You could get a Conestoga wagon. You could get a Stanhope buggy. All sorts of things. It reminds me a lot of first edition, how they had, a dozen or 24 different pole arms. They are very expansive in their equipment. Ships, same way. There looks to be about 24 ships here. Barges, blockade runners, fishing smack, floating palace, frigate, galleon, galley, hulk, longship, schooner, sloop, trireme, warship. If you want, with all their stats and pictures, they're there. And if this is something that you could find useful in your 5e campaign, which your DM's guide doesn't give you any of that, go for it. Now I'm going to fast flip through some of this. They got some good world building stuff, but 5e DMG does have some world building tips. But what 5e doesn't have? Chapter 10, Land as Treasure. This is where the PCs start settling down or building their own keeps, building their own castles, building their own domains. This used to be a thing with 1st and 2nd edition. When you hit name level, 9th and 10th, the wizard would build a tower, the fighter would get a keep, the thieves start, getting into maybe starting to run a thieves guild of his own. Gives you some rules, some guidance as to what to do and how you could possibly have your own little kingdom. Followed, of course, by going to war, trying to put out some rules for mass combat, which 5e doesn't really get into. So if you're trying to do more with your 5e game, you're going to need supplements. This is one of them. The future. Okay, we have a section on the future, fantasy and technology, the post-Renaissance, the pre-industrial age, industrial, or you could go back into. They're talking about things you can do with other genres, even bringing in firearms and whatnot, or possibly skipping it back a ways and doing a little more sword and sandal, Bronze Age kind of stuff, depending on where you want to go. Honestly, if you can get the Castles and Crusades books when they're on sale, definitely worth it. I would consider picking them up. They really do like getting into the equipment, and there's a section in here about equipment and how it relates to roleplay. The type of equipment you wear on your character says a lot about what kind of character that is. But also, half a dozen different armorers might treat your character differently. It's not just a matter of, I'm going to go to the armorer, I'm going to pay 45 gold, and I'm going to get this piece of armor. No, some of them might not like the looks of you and decide to charge you more. Some of them might say, hey, I got some really good stuff here, but first you just got to do a quest for me. I need help, and only you can help me. Or, hey, I would love to help you, but, I'm working for the Baron and we're going to war, and if you want to get armor here, you got to sign up and join in the war. All kinds of little plot twists and suggestions for making even the armorers unique. So, like I said, if you're running a 5e game, consider picking up Castles and Crusades. And if you're a D&D historian and you're collecting, first, second, third, fourth, etc., all these back editions, I think you should consider Castles and Crusades, because this was the game that Gary Gygax said, if I was still running the company, if I still had D&D, This is what 3rd edition would have looked like. So that's something to keep in mind. It's kind of an alternate timeline for D&D, would have gone right straight through Castles and Crusades. And that was out of Gary's mouth himself. So, like I said, go for it. Take a look at it. Take a look at Castles and Crusades. DM Kurt, out.